Marino, so that she can take over from there. She's back. Thank you so much.
You were doing you were doing fine with that. So thank you so much for that, Bims. Winifred is with us. Winifred, I would like for you to introduce yourself. Tell us why you're here in the capacity of this domestic violence. What is the word now? The person who has gone through that, overcome that, and you are now thriving in your own self and in your own field. Please introduce yourself, and then Lady T afterwards. You do the same thing. Let's Winifred.
Oh, hello. My name is Winifred Irigi. I'm a trauma integrated brain health coach and leadership development consultant. I also do a lot of DI advocacy across different pillars. I have a background in systems engineering. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and I'm here to be a voice to that negative experience, possibly to inspire people that there is life after domestic violence. There's a beautiful life after domestic violence. So it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this space.
Thank you, Winnie and Winifred. We're OGQCs. We go back decades. Welcome. All right. Where is Lady T?
Yes,
Lady T, it's your turn.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Toro Olusegun, aka Lady T. I'm passionate about impacting lives, positively, including the empowerment of women who are marginalized and families who are in need. I'm a senior social worker in working within the UK local authorities, currently consulting within the local authority. And my passion is to influence change as a survivor of domestic abuse. And I think for me, it's been a journey over the years, moving from surviving. And there was a place where you survived it. Thank God I made it. And there was a place where you now get to where you're thriving. And for me, I'm in a place where I'm thriving, and recently even learning more about this from the lenses of the trauma care. And I've recently, through Jazz, Dr. Marino's Institute, I've just recently qualified, certified as a trauma-informed practitioner and coach. And those are the lenses through which I'm practicing. I'm also training to be a Christian counselor. And so for me today, it's about sharing my journey and just bringing a lot of the experiences that I work with as well, within my career, to help inform everyone.
Explain over.
You spray that perfume.
Which perfume? No, some of my
please
perfume.
mute yourself because we're trying to mute you. Okay, thank you. The perfume smells good. Lovely. All right. So welcome everyone. And thank you for being here today. This is I'm going to come at this. This is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we needed to do this. We did an Insta Live the other day, but I wanted to have a place where we could actually deep dive into the patterns of violence. Domestic violence is a trauma experience. It's a traumatic experience. And we want to look at what that looks like. We want to look at what the abuser, if there is a prototype of the abuser, and then how it impacts their life, and then what do you do now? How do you get to the place where Winnie and Lady T are when they're saying that they're thriving? They're not only surviving, they're striving. There's this whole concept of post-traumatic growth. That would take in your traumatic experiences and actually living a higher life than the one you had before the trauma. And you can get there. We'll talk about that today. But before we do that, I would like to just very briefly before we go into the way this interview is gonna go, is it's not just you telling your story. We're going to talk about abuse patterns by itself, and then you can add your story as you deem fit, right? So Lady T, let's start with you. Did you notice any patterns in the abuse when you were in it?
The first thing I want to say is that, to be honest, I didn't know that I was in a domestic abusive relationship for years. I had no definition for it. I had no awareness. In fact, to be honest, I think it was a setup, me going into my social work career. It was when I started to retrain in that career that I discovered that, oh my God, this is what I am going through. And you can imagine being in lectures at university and I'm triggered throughout, and I leave classes and I have to drive home an hour, and that's my space to process everything. And I did that for years, and that was my saving grace. That was the moment, my aha moment, that okay, life has to change. So for me, I think the first thing, I mean, when you look at domestic abuse, it's a pattern of behavior that would include physical or sexual abuse, physical in terms of you've been hit, you've been kicked, spat, anything that is externalized towards you. It's physical, sexual abuse, and for me, if I just quickly just add in here, Dr. Marino, this is the first time I'm having the opportunity actually to speak a little bit, just bring a bit of my experience into this, because it was an enigma, and I've never really been able to speak about it, not because I didn't want to, but it was always waiting for the right time. And so for me, it was like the sexual part of it actually struck me, because I realized as a Christian, hey, your body belongs to your husband. And so I realized that, for a long time, this guy would, after being verbally abusive and has been physical, would want to have sex. And I would be like, actually, no, I can't. And it would be like, oh no, your body belongs to me. And there was consistent sexual intercourse without consent. There were times when it was like, okay, come here, Joe, and so for me, that was the hardest bit for me to come to terms with, that, oh my God, how can you be actually sexually abused in your own marriage? And, people would kind of like say, oh no, you're in marriage, your body does not belong to you. But actually, it is when there is no consent, it is an abuse. And it is also violent or threatening behavior. So a lot of threats. I will do this to you. Oh, all right. So you're not going to listen. Okay, we shall see. And then that threat is being carried out by various actions that follows. It is controlling or coercive behavior. Controlling behavior is a range of acts, that are designed to subordinate one person, or to make them dependent and isolate them from any source of support. So that is you being coerced, you're being manipulated, molded, isolated from your source of support. So you can't take advantage of resources, capacities, you're just completely depleted. All right, that is coercive control. And it also includes economic abuse. So this is the term that a lot of people do not understand, or might be new to a lot of people. Domestic abuse includes economic abuse, which means a behavior that has a substantial adverse effect on your ability to acquire, use, or maintain money or other property, or even obtain goods or services. So you have a joint account, he's controlling the account, or she is controlling the account, because I've got to be careful, because I know that within my profession, and from what we know about domestic abuse, it's not always 100% men who are the perpetrators. We know there is a small percentage of women who are perpetrators. So So you not having access, so the child benefit or whatever benefit in the UK, we have all sorts of benefits coming in, and that money is going to Mr. A's pot, and then you can't access it, or you go to the shop and you have to come back and itemize everything that you have bought. You have to get permission to get money out. You're just being monitored. So that is economic abuse. Or your money, your credit card is maxed out and you have to buy this other person and you have to bear the brunt because it's in your name. Or loan is abuse, or anything that that impacts on you economically is a form of domestic abuse. And also psychological, emotional abuse. And it does not matter whether the behavior has only happened once. It doesn't matter, or whether it happens so many times. The moment it happens once, it is a psychological, emotional, and the emotional abuse is the one that is a lot harder to even define sometimes. It's easy when somebody slaps you or kicks you or they're being violent, physical towards you, but abuse that is systematically eating down at your core value, your personhood, snidey comments, being put down, things being said about you, being said about your loved ones, just emotional abuse that is psychologically impacting on your mind. So, those are some of the behaviors that you see with these abusers. And for me, to be honest, I saw everything. I went through seasons when it would travel and there would be no money. It would leave no money. It would be like, okay, well, you want to stay in the UK, so you sort yourself out. The system would give you benefit anyway. And so I had to walk myself through the system and not realizing that actually this was a form of abuse. So those are some of the patterns that I identified in my experience. Yeah.
Wow. Just it's almost it's classic. It's abuse 101 you just described. The economic stronghold, the economic hold on the victim, the sexual abuse that goes in, the physical abuse that happens, and then the emotional abuse that happens. I'm going to also just itemize a few more as we move on. Thank you for sharing that thing. And I'm so glad you get to share your story today, Lady T. It's so powerful to be able to share it and let people also see life after that. You've shown us what you're doing. I know you're doing great things. You're raising this young man, and more power to you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Winifred, we're talking about patterns of abuse. What patterns can you bring to the table that in your own story or the ones that you know of?
Thank you again for inviting me to talk about the subject that I'm very passionate about. My passion really is to draw this so that women and girls can live in safe and peaceful communities and thrive and be able to fulfill their potential and contribute to the economy. And that's one of the things that domestic violence stops from happening. The cost of domestic violence is in billions. So it's a community problem. It's not just an individual problem. So I don't really want to talk my own perspective, although my experience was just a nightmare. I did notice something was wrong, but nobody told me that what was wrong. It was called domestic abuse. Like Lady T said, nobody put a name to it. And I'm an engineer by training. And being an engineer, I am taught to think critically and solve problems. And so I really thought it was me. And that maybe if I change something about what I was doing, maybe there would be peace at home. I knew there was no peace, but I thought I was the cause of no peace. And I did go to church. I'm a believer, so I went to church and I was counseled on how to behave. Unfortunately for me, I didn't realize that I was opening the door to greater abuse. Now that I've done a lot of study on domestic violence, and thank God that a lot of pastors are being trained about domestic violence. So let's set the stage first. Let's describe what is domestic violence. So I know that Lady T has talked about it, but let's make it more concise. Let's because it was big. Let's narrow it. So gender-based violence, according to the UNHCR, it's called is what it means is, my tongue is twisting there. What it means is harmful acts directed at an individual because of their gender. That's why it's called gender-based violence. So, most people that suffer from gender-based violence are females. We do know there is a proportion of males that suffer from gender-based violence, but when you look at the scale, more females suffer from gender-based violence. The root of gender-based violence is gender inequality and a power and control cycle. So there's a power differential between the abuser and the person that they choose to abuse. That is the victim. So in my case, I don't like to look at myself as a victim. I looked at myself as a high functioning professional. And one of the things I noticed was that right from the beginning, he was very into finances. That's his profession. So right from the beginning, he wanted control of the finances. And it seemed to make sense to me, who was thinking rationally. I thought it was. Is that, oh, I am an accountant. I know about money. I know about stock exchange. So your salary should go to me and I will control it and I will give you a certain amount of money for your expenditure. I just thought, at first I thought this sounds odd, but then when there was a lot of fussing, I was like, okay, you know what, it's money anyways. You can control it, and I'm not a big spender. That's fine. But that is financial abuse. Later I found out, because the person wants control, wants to tell you what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And when you do not have control of your money, that means there's no self-efficacy. Somebody's telling you, how do you spend your money? Even the little one that they give you, they still, when you go out and shop and you bring it home, they're like, is that what, maybe I'm giving you too much money, that's why you can buy things like that. So that's why I told you that the root of domestic violence, you have to understand that it's power and control. So even if the person has some control, the person is always looking for more ways to control you. So one of the things that for me, it was financial abuse. That was the first time I noticed something is really wrong with this, because I'm an engineer. When I left my country, Nigeria, and came to work in the UK, I mean, that was 3 decades ago. I was earning a lot of money, and so we are not talking about chicken change. We're talking about a lot of money and being given like 1% of that money for your own survival, and then keeping the rest of the money and investing it in what he called the stock market. But then it went further on, whereby, which is another thing, the abuser wants to kind of separate you from your family and your friends, because you want to support your family. Just by virtue of our culture, when you leave, you want to give money back to Nigeria, back to your family, and you're earning so much money for freaking, you're taking a lot of money. You should be able to do that. They invested in your education. You should be able to do that. But that was always a bone of contention, So the person wants to control how you spend your money and who you spend your money on. So that was financial abuse, which I later found out was financial abuse. So, and that is one of the major patterns, that this person wants to control you. So it's going to look for every way to control it. That's why I said that the root of it is power and control. So another thing that the person would do typically is, every time you go out, who did you go and see? Why did you go and see? Why did you spend that long? Blah, blah, blah. So it's now no more a peer relationship. It's now like a parent and child. You have to tell them who you are going to see, when you are going to see, and the person will call you where you are. And maybe call the person, did she really come there? So really what is happening is that stress, all of these are stressors. So you are working on your toes, you are tiptoeing around this person, because anything you do can cause this person to be upset. So you want to be at peace, especially if you're a believer. It says, as much as it's possible, live at peace with people. So before you know what, you are like, okay, I can't see you. I can't see it, because maybe he doesn't like the person. So that is another control. That is another pattern. They try and isolate you from your family and friends. Another pattern is that they can also threaten you. Oh, I'm going to divorce you. I mean, any argument, we're going to go for a divorce. And depending on your belief system, you're like, I have two kids, two children. Why do I want to be divorced? What is this problem that it will end in divorce? So it's called coercive control. This person is in your ear, threatening you, telling you that if you do not toe the line, if you do not do exactly as I have told you to do, there is a severe consequence. And the person can show other areas of consequence, like the person, like maybe if you have joint accounts and you have you maybe your phone bill, the person can go and cut it off. So these threats are not idle threats. So you will really feel threatened. And what is happening is that physiologically, your body is responding to this stress. Your body, for me, my body was bringing out a lot of cortisol. And my babies were being born very sickly. And nobody told me that this was abuse, because the abuser has a Jekyll and Hyde personality. On the outside, people are like lovey-dovey. The person is always coming with you, holding your hands, holding your waist. And so you're confused. The person has destabilized you. Outside, everybody says this person is Mr. Charm. Outside, the person is so charming, always pulling your seat out for you to sit down. But inside, you are going through a different journey, and you cannot put the two together. It's like, who am I living with? That's why I say the person is Jekyll and Hyde. And because there are cultural and religious constraints, the thought of saying you want to get out is not at the top of your mind. What you are thinking of is, I want to save this marriage. And so you start to look for Christian doctrine, go to Christian meetings to see maybe if I submit more. So basically, this person, by their behavior, by the pattern of behavior, this person really has gotten into your head. The person has changed your neural pathways without you even knowing. And so you've now become a people pleaser. So even if you came into the relationship and you were strong and dynamic, in your attempt, because of cultural pressures, because of religious pressures, in your attempt to keep this relationship going, all of a sudden you become a very different person. And some people notice it and they start to bring things to your attention. And one of my seniors from QC, she's like, Winifred, I told you that 22 years ago. Oh, borrow. That's what she's always saying. Because she had gone through the journey herself. So she saw some red flags that she brought to my attention. So there's financial control, there's isolating you from people, and then there's always checking up on you and checking your belongings. And then there is threatening you. And the person may not say they will kill themselves, but some people do. Some people will tell you they will commit suicide if you leave, but the person may threaten you like, you know what, I am going to divorce you or something. But the person knows you, so the person will use something, but you will feel threatened, So those are patterns that I saw in my relationship, and they are patterns that you would see typically in other relationships. Another thing that I saw in my relationship was that because I was a high-flying professional, type A personality, always wanting to, very ambitious. And somehow, because he had already reprogrammed my head over the years, because I'd lost so many children, I'd lost 6 babies, and I didn't know it was the stress of the abuse. But anyway, one of the things he told me, he managed to convince me that I was earning more money than him, that I should leave work and stay and look after the children. It seemed to make sense to me because I lost all these 6 babies. When my 2 babies were born, I was like, I just want to put them in this little castle and say, Rapunzel, bring down your hair. So I was so protective of them when they were born. So it seemed to make sense to spend some time with them rather than sending them to the daycare. But I always felt I was going to come back to work. But he had his own plan, which, and being a very quiet person, you have to become a mind reader. I just kind of believed him. So there is a pattern that is associated with the abuser. And this point is very important. But there's also a pattern associated with the people who are victims. An abuser cannot go and abuse just anybody. They know who they can abuse. They know some people who are Ogoju. They know those ones, they can't try them. So really, when you are talking about recovery, you've got to talk about self-efficacy, because you have to understand the parts of your personality that open the door to this type of abuse. So those are the sort of patterns that I saw. And there's some others, but I'll give you the mic.
Wow, wow. You guys are speaking to my PowerPoint already, and I'm so glad you're able to really bring personal, weight to this. Thank you for that. And look, when you are a walking testimony, we know where you came from, and you know what you're doing right now. And we're so grateful that you're here to share this with the ladies and men today. I also have Fumi Smith is here. Fumi Johnson is here. And I would like for her to be a part of this conversation. So I'm going to bring her in just for a few minutes. I'll bring you guys back in a minute. Let me just hear her take on this. And how come I can't spotlight Fumi? Fumi, where are you?
I'm here.
Okay, hold on. I'm still trying to spotlight you. Okay, there you go. Go ahead. Fumi, so I know that you've worked with women who have been abused. And I want you to bring some of that when we're talking about patterns of abuse. I want you to be able to tell us what are some, in addition to what Winifred and Lady T have shared with us, what are some other patterns that you noticed in your line of work? And please introduce yourself briefly so that people know who you are.
Okay, so my name is Fumi Johnson. I've worked in this field since 1999 exclusively. Before that, I was a general prosecutor, but 1999, I started working exclusively on domestic abuse as a prosecutor. First of all, I'd like to commend both Lady T and Winifred for speaking up, for being generous enough to share their stories, because it's not easy to share intimate details of what someone who purports to love you has done to you. So I just want to commend them for their courage, their bravery. They were very, very detailed in what they said. There really isn't anything else that I could think about. And also I've been following the chat as well. It really is about breaking down a person's psychological defenses. I often used to say to people that it's our determination and our desire to survive are so strong that if somebody comes at you first off, threatening to hit you, you're likely to fight back. But the work of the abuser, and what many of them have learned to do, is first of all, they dismantle your psychological defenses. They dismantle. And Winifred said something very important. They're very skilled at identifying the points of weakness where they can hone in. So for example, most people would say, oh no, I couldn't see myself being a victim of domestic abuse. But these people are very skilled at reading. And so say, for example, maybe you're talking and you say, for example, oh, in my family, there have been comments made that I'm too career focused, I'm too career driven, I'm this and that. That's where they're going to start pressing, first of all. They will press there, first of all. And so initially you think, oh, wow, they listened to me. And then you start thinking, well, if they're saying that, maybe there's truth to this. And so something that someone said to me just in the course of a conversation, he said that there are some people, some men who will see a strong woman as a challenge. To break her down will be a challenge, and that they will set their mind to do that, almost as if I can break her, I can break anybody. And sometimes it's those hidden insecurities that make you more vulnerable to this kind of a person. If you've had relationships that haven't worked, and the people that you've dated in the past have said to you, oh, it's because you're this, it's because you're that. As Winifred said, you're going to start thinking the problem is with you, and you're going to start trying to adjust and adjust. But really, you can't change anything because the problem is not with you. You can't win. If he says the cushion is black and you agree, abuse will follow. If he says the cushion is white and you agree, abuse will follow, because it's nothing to do with you. It's about his desire to be in control of you and how this relationship is. And, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. It's often very insidious, very insidious. It just happens bit by bit by bit. I recall someone saying to me that the first time it happened to her, she'd been with this person and they had gone out and they were talking to someone, they were talking to another group of people, and he had expressed an opinion and she had expressed a contrary opinion. And when they got home, she understood that he was really mad about that. And he was like, how dare you, you showed me up, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, what is that? And she said that he beat her for the first time that day, but that he beat her strategically. So he did not beat her in order to leave any bruises that were visible. He beat her in places that would be covered by clothing. That is not the action of a person that has lost control, because that is often what we are told. Oh, this person just lost control. No, that's a person that decided what you would be punished for, what the punishment would be, how that punishment would be administered, and how they would maintain their facade outside. He threatened to commit suicide. He appealed to her sense of loyalty. So that's what I mean when I say that they're very skilled at reading you. He appealed to her sense of loyalty. He said, you're my only friend. I have no other people in my life. If you leave me, I will commit suicide. She didn't want to be responsible for that. So she stayed until basically he broke her down. She had a house when she met him. She lost the house. You know, she had a good job. She lost the job. She had nothing by the time he left. And he decided to leave, thankfully, because she wasn't going to, because he'd broken her down so comprehensively.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much, for sharing that with us. These patterns of abuse. This is one of the reasons I want to do this today. I wanted to be able to look at the patterns of abuse. What does it look like? In fact, we're going to look at what does the abuser look like, and I'm going to quickly share a PowerPoint. It's not going to be long or tedious. Once I'm done with that, just because there are people in relationships that don't know that they're in an abusive relationship. They're just wondering what's happening with me, what's going on with me. Let's look at what that looks like. In addition to all the stuff that you've said today, I am so elated that you are able to articulate this such personal and professionally. And so after I'm done with a PowerPoint briefly, then we'll bring the panel back and we'll talk about the way forward or anything else that you wanted to add to the conversation. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Are we all in agreement with this?
Yes, makes sense.
Yes.
All right, so let's look at what I have on this PowerPoint for you. We've already defined it. We've already defined domestic abuse. I'm not going to belabor this. It's called several things: domestic abuse, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and I'll explain the difference between that and gender-based violence. Look, domestic abuse happens within a home. You're together in a place. Intimate partner violence means that you are together, but you're not living together. And that violence is happening during there. But it's a pattern. There's a pattern to it. Everybody has said that today. There's a pattern to it. There's a pattern of behavior. And it's usually about power and control. Constantly about power and control. It has nothing to do with you. You can be more righteous. You can be more humble. You can be more submissive. That is not true when people say, oh, if my partner will be just a little bit more submissive, or if my partner would just make some more money, or if my partner would do this. It's a lie. It's not about what you do or you don't do. It's about who that person is. And that is the point that we need to make today. And also, one of the things I wanted to drop, and I think the panel has also talked about it, is that abuse is not only physical. Abuse is not only physical. So when we're talking about domestic violence, when people hear the word violence, they're thinking of physical violence, but that is not the only definition of violence. Violence is anything that violates your own self-agency, your own self-efficacy. That is violent. So it could be sexual, emotional, economic. We've heard the stories from the ladies, psychological, anything that can be used to exert power over you. That is what we're looking for when we're talking about what domestic abuse is. So please know there are this physical violence, and nobody should be physically beat with those type 1 types of abuse or traumas. But there are also the other ones people don't notice. It's the exerting the influence over you and trying to say that put you in your place. Domestic violence can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone. I loved what Fumi said. All they need to do is find your point of weakness. So if you have it all together and you are a Christian and you love God and you don't want to do any wrong, or you don't have to be a Christian, but you're religious and you don't want to, you want to do what is right, they'll come in using that. They'll say, oh, but you call yourself a Christian, why aren't you following this? Oh, but you call yourself a Christian, why aren't you following? They would come in that from wherever your emotional fragility is. That is where they're going to come in. And so anyone can be abused. And abuse usually happens in captivity. And this, in the most serious abuses, happens in captivity. And when people hear of captivity, they're thinking of, kidnapping, imprisonment, and things like that. When you're in a house and somebody has stripped you of your emotional agency, your emotional, psychological efficacy, and they have stripped you of everything, emotionally and psychologically, they will open that door, give you the key, and you still will not walk out. Because at this point, you have been imprinted with all of the animus of the perpetrator. So the worst thing about captivity is most people who are captured, they're captured by force. Most people who are captured are captured by force. It's a very violent thing. They're captured by force. But in domestic captivity, you are captured by courtship. It starts with courtship, which is why this is so egregious. It is usually somebody who said they loved you. It is somebody who says they care about you. It is captive by courtship. They tell you they love you, you put a ring on it, you get married, you're expecting everything to be beautiful. This is captivity by courtship. And then the next thing you know is there is now a strategic pattern to strip you of your own person. We are all made in the image of God. No one is lesser than the other. The woman and the man are made in the image of God, and we are all sons and daughters. So no one, in whatever relationship, has the permission or the authority to make the other person less than, And so they begin to woo you. You might have the honeymoon period, and then bam, things begin to happen, because now they have you in the house, and things begin to happen, and you think that oh, well, they're not beating me, so I'm okay. But when they start doing things like and we'll talk about some of the examples in a minute, you start finding that they're not putting guards around your life. You're putting guards around your life. And you are now conditioned to depend on them. You're conditioned to depend on them, all right? And they will coerce you. We've heard the details from the story, that they will coerce you to do things that you don't want to do. To add to the list of what has been spoken today, when when you start hearing somebody, before those of you who are single, and you're looking about to get married, when somebody, and you're talking to somebody who has an ex, when they start bad mouthing their ex, you know, he was this, she was that, and it was that, and they did know nothing was happening to them. It is a sign you need to watch out for. You need to watch out for that. And if the ex was so bad, you want to figure out why that was, or why that is. So that is very important. Rushing into sex right away, for those people rushing into sex, because the idea is to get you as quickly as possible so they can exert that control over you. And when you start being codependent, meaning that you maybe they are alcoholics, or maybe they spend too much money, but you enable that, and now you're codependent on each other, that's a sign to watch out for. If there is no respect, if somebody doesn't respect you, if somebody does not respect you, if somebody does not have boundaries, it does respect your boundaries, that is someone you have to watch out for. If you know, they put you down in public, they talk about you in any way they want, there's no boundaries at all, that is a sign you want to watch out for. If they seek to entangle you quickly, you know, this, I'm talking to single people here that trying that, if you're, you know, you're trying to entangle you quickly, all of a sudden you've only known each other for like 3 months, but immediately they're trying to, you know, oh, you're going to do this and we're going to do that and all of that. You have to watch out for those. Are signs of abusive personality. You know, when they start blaming you for things, you know, they'll say, you made me yell at you, you made me hit you, you made me do this. Victim blaming. You made me do it. It's never their fault. You made me do it. And then moving the target. Moving the target is, I think Fumi was talking about this. Moving the target, they will say, if only you just stopped working so much. If only you just stayed at home. If only you had sex with me, this. If only you did this. And once you do that and you think, oh, I'm doing this, it should be enough. Immediately there will be another thing. Immediately there'll be another. They're constantly moving the target, so you can never be okay. They're always going to move the target. I think one of the things I want to be clear today is an abuser is out of control. It's out of control. Now they're going to hide it from everybody else, and there's nothing you can do to please that abuser. They will keep moving the target. It is not about you, it is about them. And that is one thing we want to make clear today. Or they'll give you the silent treatment. The silent treatment is, well, because you didn't do this, they won't talk to you for several weeks. They won't talk to you for months. Now, it's also clear to say that abuse comes in both ways, because when we hear the physicality of maybe it's a man hitting a woman or a woman hitting a man, people don't talk about the type 2 abuses. The type 2 abuses are the ones where you're constantly putting somebody down. You're constantly nagging at them. You're constantly criticizing them. You're emotionally abusing them. And then that can lead to a physical altercation in the relationship. Those two people are abusing each other now. Right. And so it's not only the big things, it's also those criticism, those put downs, those emotional manipulations, those are also abuse. Now let's talk about what the perpetrator looks like. The first thing I want to say is what is in number 3 in the bullets. The abuser is not easily described. You cannot look at somebody and say, oh, that is an abuser. In fact, it is difficult to spot an abuser because they usually they usually have on the game face in them, if in their churches or in their work, they're doing well. You can't say, oh, wow, that person looks like an abuser. No, you can't spot them. They are not easily described. That is why it is so difficult to say, when people say, not difficult, when people say, oh, no, that person cannot be abuser. No, there cannot be that person. Oh, look at he's such an upstanding, or she's such an upstanding citizen. It's not easy to spot them. And that is something we need to talk about, right? the abuser has an exaggerated sense of power. They have an exaggerated sense of power. Their goal is to mold the victim or the survivor by their actions and beliefs. That is their goal. They see themselves omniscient. They feel like it is their job to make you into their own image, to make you into their own image. That is important. That is the goal of the perpetrator, is to strip you of everything and then imprint you with the data that they want. All right. They want to turn you into somebody that they have created. So the perpetrator is actively and systematically going to do this. The first thing they're going to do is they will seek out situations where they can oppress you in such a way that you now become tolerant of the oppression. You are going to condone the oppression, and you are sometimes even going to admire the oppression. And I'll tell you why you do that in a minute. So they are also very secretive. They're going to do things inside in your room where nobody can see, in the house where nobody can see. Remember, the goal is to enslave you. The end goal of the perpetrator is to enslave you. So they're going to do everything they can do to exercise control over you, and they will do that. It will do that by taking you away from everything that you know, and they will always justify this. They will always justify this. And it is always a reason why they're doing what they're doing. Religious people will use scriptures use scriptures as their tool of enslavement, and they'll quote things like, your body is not your own, it's mine. Submit to me, things like that. They'll start making those kind of quotes, and then they're going to demand that you love them. They're going to demand that you show gratitude. They're going to demand that you have respect, even after demonizing you, after removing everything that's good in your life. The ultimate goal, listen to this. The ultimate goal is to create a willing victim. That is the ultimate goal. Someone that would actually then victimize their own self, even when the perpetrator is not there. And that's usually what happens when people are victimized. Psychological domination looks like this. Number one, they'll start seasoning you. The thing doesn't happen all at once. They'll coerce you, they'll break you down in their own pattern, in their own fashion, and everything is repeated. They have their own techniques. When you come home, this is what happens. This is what you talk, what it is, what they say to you. They're going to disempower you. They're going to keep telling you, you call yourself a woman and you're not doing this. You call yourself a man and you're not doing this. They'll tell you you can't see your friends. They'll tell you that you're not making enough money, and anything that they use to disempower and disconnect you from your source is there. They want to destroy your sense of self. They want to destroy we've been using the word self-efficacy and self-agency in relation to others. They will compare you to another woman. They will compare you to another man. They will tell you how you don't measure up. So these things, you see, are not even physical violence, right? These are all psychological domination. They want to dominate your mind. They will tell you that you're offending God by not submitting to them. They'll threaten you with death. One of the panelists said it. They'll threaten you with death. They will even say things about you're not going to make heaven. And this is let me just pause right there, because this has been something that has bothered me lately in Christendom. For example, people are now, they say the things, oh, I pray that you make heaven. So as if we're still unsure of this heaven's journey. So we're praying that you make heaven. So when you now add that into abuse, They'll say, if you don't treat me properly, you're not going to make heaven. Do you see how that works? So these are all the sense to destroy who you are. They're going to instill fear in you, and fear becomes the operating emotion during abuse, because you fear for your children, you fear for yourself, you fear for life, you think everybody's against you. You the way you begin to see the world is a little bit different, and it destroys your own sense of autonomy. You don't have that agency anymore. And so that's why I said, even if they left the door open, the most abused survivors will not walk out, because they have now come to the place where, they've been stripped of everything. When somebody begins to wake you up at night, and they wake you up at night to, it's like the Inquisition, to interrogate you every night while you're trying to sleep. They wake you up at 2 a.m. in the morning, 1 a.m. in the morning. Okay, so why did you say that yesterday? And sleep. That is part of psychological domination. Humiliation, the dependence on the victim for everything. You're dependent on they want you to depend on them for everything. And in some abuse homes, they'll offer you substances, drugs. It could be cocaine, it could be weed, it could be what do you call it? Any types of prescription. That's what I'm looking for. Prescription medication. And I've worked with doctors, with clients who were married to doctors who were actually prescribing their wives medication and bringing it home for them. So one was slowly just everything. She gave her Valium, and she has to take that all the time. There's so many ways where they want to make sure that you're no longer in your own head. They're now in your head, if that makes sense. And another thing is, they will beg for forgiveness after they've stripped you for everything. After a pretty rough day, then they say, I'm so sorry. Forgive me. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm sorry. This is not going to happen again. That. And then they ask you to prove your loyalty. So these are some of the consequences of abuse. Consequences. You get total surrender. That is what it is. They want you to totally surrender to them. You have what we call psychological degradation. I've described a lot of that today. Trauma, you're traumatized. Fear, hypervigilance, you're constantly on the alert. You're so in your autonomic nervous system. You are especially in your sympathetic nervous system. You're constantly on the alert. You have cortisols, pumping through your body, because you're in a fight or flight. So you are constantly on hypervigilant. Then you have somatic symptoms. Things start happening. You start having cramps, headaches. You start getting sick. Things happen in your body. When he talked about the miscarriages, all of those things happen. And that is easily explained by what happens in the brain. Because once you're in a state of trauma, the brain tells every other network in the body that you don't need to function at this point in capacity, because we need to help this woman, or we need to help this man. So reproductive systems, metabolic systems, all the systems that do the work of life, they're not functioning properly anymore, because you're engaged now in a trauma zone. And so those somatic symptoms are very important. Trauma bonding. For trauma bonding, it's when you get bonded with the abuser. But do you know why that happens? When you're on a high, when they're abusing you and you're on a high, it is that same part of the brain that is what do I call it? That is the fight or flight zone that's activated. And then when they're nice to you, it's like they put in, a pain reliever in there. So the pleasure part of the brain is highlighted. And when that happens, you get into the same pattern of drug abuse. is the same pattern of trauma bonding. Is humiliation, pleasure. Humiliation, pleasure. So your brain gets addicted to that. You're constantly wanting that drop of dopamine, that drop of pleasure to come after all of the suffering, and then you bond with them. And when you bond with them, you now become the perpetrator yourself in some point in your life, or you will stay in that place and not come out. And survival, and this is one of the reasons why people don't leave, survival adaptation. When we're talking about this whole idea of survival adaptation, is this idea that you're going to do everything necessary to survive. You're now in your survivor's zone. You're going to do everything. You're going to lie. You're going to manipulate. You're going to do everything to survive. You're going to adapt in this situation. You're going to adapt in this situation. And that adaptation, you might begin to call resiliency. And that is what keeps a lot of people in those relationships, because you've learned how to survive in captivity. But remember, people, surviving in captivity is not living. So we need to still learn how to live, and hopefully we'll get the time to do it today. I'm just going to go through this a little bit briefly. At any time you begin to see yourself, in, let me talk about the double think, because I can talk about all of this. When we talk about the double think, that when you begin to see yourself, hold two beliefs that are contrary, right? But you believe them. They're contrary beliefs, but you believe them. So you believe that this guy hates you, but this guy loves you, right? You're going to believe that the abuse is wrong, but this guy is still okay. So holding two contradicting beliefs in one mind and then accepting both as true is what keeps you in this trance-like state and helps you stay in the prison for a long time. So when people say, how come you haven't left? How come you haven't left? This is why you haven't left, because you have been able to accept the abuse. You have been able to take that abuse, even though you know it's wrong. And that is one of the reasons why people stay. Is this making sense? Are you all with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we are.
So anyone who sees abuse, I wanted to paint that picture so that we all see it very clearly. All right. So that sometimes you might be the abuser. You have to check yourself. Are you the abuser? Are you the abuser? Because abuse comes in both type 1 and type 2s. Am I the one manipulating? Am I the one constantly criticizing? Who are you? Are you the abuser? An abuse that is not treated will carry on to another relationship. So if you've been in an abusive relationship, I urge you to get help. Is Winnie still here?
Yes, I am absolutely here.
Okay, I don't see you. So I'm going to bring Lady T and Winnie back. Okay, somebody help me bring Winnie back, please.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, ma'am.
I'm right here. Can't you see me? I can see you.
Okay, there you are. All right. So when I was going through that, some of those things that you said were already, that I listed were already things that you identified, right? But this idea that the psyche of the person who is being tormented is so degraded, is so deconstructed, that they then take on the image of the perpetrator. They start to believe what the perpetrator says about them. And if you are not careful, you are now made in their image. You're now made in their image. It's like colonization, people.
Come on.
It is like colonization. You know, they come in, strip you of everything, put image you, put you in their image. So when the colonizer leaves, what happened? Their imprint is still on you. And so you continuously begin to colonize yourself, traumatize others if you don't get help. So my question to you, both of you, is this: how did you get help? How did you get help? What was the type of help that came to you? And were you able to receive that help when it came? Well, let's start with Winifred.
Okay, so a point you brought up is really very important. And that's why I do a lot of domestic violence advocacy. And that is the theory of epigenetics. You talked about the fact that when somebody doesn't get help, not only does the person can potentially become a perpetrator, but all that trauma that is stored can pass to the next generation.
Absolutely.
The children have seen you being abused.
Yeah.
They begin to think, because it's not only your brain that they have reconditioned, they have reconditioned your children's brains.
Absolutely.
So we are talking about something that is really very serious, because your children begin to believe that this is the way to behave, and they will start to behave like that in their own community of influence. And these children don't even know that their brain has been reconfigured. So epigenetics is really very important, because when these children have children, that the genes of the children that they carry is going to carry your own trauma. So your children, your grandchildren, we have this trauma in their system right from their genetic, right from their genes. That is why we have to continue to talk about this thing. It is really very serious. We have to break the cycle. For me, just going back to your question.
Winifred, just before you continue, I want to say something about that epigenetics. The new study that came out in 2021 has now says that epigenetics can pass on till the 14th generation. The
Very
14
scary.
generations, which
Very
means
scary.
that your children are reaping the consequences of a trauma that they did not initially participate in.
That's right.
Yes. And I can tell you that I have seen that in my children. So how did I escape? I really like that story. So I call her Professor Dot Two, so PP Dot. So Dr. Aki Dot Two, we both went to the same secondary school, Queen's College. And I'm an extrovert, and I'm very, very brilliant. I have to say that. So when my friends did not see me in activities, and me always talking, solving problems and everything, they're like, this is not like Winifred. Where is Winifred? Winifred is in America, but nobody can see Winifred, because why I talk about my intellectual is because that's what my abuser went after. That's why I had to put that, because like I said earlier on, he knows what to attack. So people didn't find me. People didn't find me always putting my head in something, trying to solve a problem, because that's my personality. I'm always carrying people's problem on my head, trying to solve it. And then one of my friends in Texas, she said she was driving to work from QC. And she said she just felt in her spirit, she just heard this quiet voice. Look for Winifred. So she started to look. Has anybody seen Winifred? Winifred talks a mile to a dozen. How come nobody has seen Winifred? And she started to get afraid. So she called, she checked Google. She I'd basically not been anywhere for 6 years, because my abuser gets me in a cage, per se, a psychological cage. So she said she just got scared. And so she said she started calling from Google. She found different numbers. She said she called one number, and the guy picked it up. But the guy said it was the wrong number. Then she called another number. And when she called the number, I picked it up, because one of the things my abuser did was, I had restricted access to phone, which when I look back, it's so ridiculous. But anyway, that was my reality. So I picked it up. And when I picked it up, I was whispering. And she's Yoruba. So the first thing she was like, Ori 84. She was cussing me up that I have been looking for you. And you mean that you are in this America? And you are picking up the phone and saying, who is that? What the heck? Do you know how scared I was? So she just went on and on. So I saw her, so I said, who is that? I don't reckon. Who are you? And I was whispering. So she was like, Oriatifo, this is Kemi speaking. I mean, she called her name. And I didn't even remember her because I'd been so traumatized. My fight and flight was just my whole sympathetic and parasympathetic noise. And she said, so she said, why are you whispering? So I said, oh, you can't call me because he's going to come in. He's soon going to come home. And she was like, who is this person? So she thought some human trafficking, maybe somebody had put me in some prison. So the way I was talking to her made her very scared. And so, of course, she got off the phone, but then she sent out an alert to the whole my class of Queen's College 83 that I spoke to Winifred, and it was like I'm speaking to somebody else. Something is really wrong. And the first thing she said was that her husband is using her as a sex slave. I think that was the part that was really traumatic to me. I think Lady T alluded to it when they wake you up at 2 o'clock and that's the time they want to have sex. You know, it's all crazy, 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 you know, because they want to create this trauma bonding you're talking about. So she threw that, she this alarm, and then she said to me, she called me again, I am sending money to you. If you do not call the police, I am going to call the police. I'm sending money to you, and this guy is going to take you out, going to kill you. And the way she talked, you know, I really got frightened. I think up to that time, I didn't even know that my life was at risk. And I remember that day I came because she was like, leave the house. And I said, I don't know how to leave this house. You know, like you said, it's very difficult to leave these relationships. And she was like, I don't know what you mean because I'm not there. She was in Texas. And then she told me, she said, Winifred, find a way to leave this house and run to the nearest police station and tell them the story. Unfortunately for me, my abuser had the inside of my house wired. So you could see this whole you know, so he knew the conversation was happening. I mean, so I did run, and I ran to the YMCA. The first Black woman I met, I told her what had happened, and the money Kemi sent me, I used it to go and hire the first lawyer that this woman, I met somebody in the YMCA, Black woman, she recommended a lawyer. I went to the lawyer and I went to court. Unfortunately for me, my abuser knew what was happening, and he was very wealthy. He had a team of lawyers. So I did not do the right thing. That is not the right thing to do because my life could have been at risk. So it's very important you bring it out that when the time a woman decides to leave an abusive relationship, that's the most dangerous time for her.
It is.
It
Yeah.
is very important that a woman goes through, uses the services of an advocate. That is why I love the fact that you brought Fumi into this conversation. You need a whole team because a whole system was used to hold you in captivity. You need
Absolutely.
another system to break free. Because when I ran to court, when I saw all those people, I was like, God, I can't do this. But it was too late. You know, I was alone. He had a team of people. I mean, his friends came to court. All of them were all well dressed in black suits, looking very professional, and I was the only one there by myself. And his friends came like maybe I think they were like 12 friends, a lot of friends to support him. And there am I looking just by myself. So safety planning is so important. You need a domestic violence advocate. You need an organization that you know that folk they know about domestic violence, so they will tell you what to do in order for you to safely live. And so that was my story. And I'm telling you, I did put a restraining order on him. But by the time the lawyers put me on the stand and put me through the eye of the needle, I just went and I dropped the restraining order, thinking that things would just, you know, thinking that I could just move away and just rebuild my life. But we ended up staying in court for 7 years, and it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. So because I did not do safety planning, so I kind of want to reemphasize that my escape was not the right way to escape, and that's why the trauma was more. If you want to escape, you call one of the organizations. If you are in the States, there are so many organizations. I'm going to write the names down on the chat. There are so many organizations. They will get a domestic violence advocate for you. They will get a counselor for you. They will tell you, they will make a plan on how to get out of the relationship, I left and I went back to the house. That is very dangerous. Typically, you want
Very
to leave
dangerous.
and you want to go to a shelter. That is the best thing for you, because the person could have come back to the house and taken me
Killed it.
out. It was
Absolutely.
very dangerous. So going to a shelter. So everybody's situation is unique, you know, and Fumi really talks about this very well in previous interviews. So really using the services of a domestic violence organization and a domestic violence coach or advocate, because they've seen this over and over, so they know how to advise you.
Yeah.
So that's how I left, but don't use my own, no, because my own was a suffer-head way of living. There are better ways to live. I'm done speaking.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Lady
Sorry,
C.
Winifred, I'm sorry to interject, but what happened? What about your mom? Your mother, your family, and did they not come into it?
Winifred, you can respond to that.
Yes, very good. My mother is in the background, so let me not bring her into this. So my mother did come, but one of the things Dr. Akindotu Merino said was trauma bonding. With trauma bonding, earlier on, you find out that the victim cannot leave the relationship. So the family will come and try and save the victim. The victim will go back to the person because the person will play on the victim's psychology. So it's called like a honeymoon phase. So after a while, the family will be like, oh, Tisumio, so after, because that's one of the things that happen. It takes an average, it takes an average of 7 times to break completely free from the relationship. So that's why you've got to be patient with a victim and not give up. Because by the time you decided, I was so grateful that what my friend told me, I think it was because I heard that this guy is going to kill you. I think that was what made me respond. But in the previous times, according to my parent, my mom and my sister, they said they are trying to save me, but the guy will call me back and I will go back. And but that's kind of typical,
Very
And
typical.
and that's why it takes about 7 times. And that's why when a woman escapes, when the police get involved, because I do advocacy across America, when the police get involved now, they do different things, and they've made so much progress. Now they have something called a lethality assessment. That means they come in, they assess the situation, they ask questions, and they say, is this a lethal situation? If it's a lethal situation, before they leave, they will call an advocate and they will remove the victim and put the victim in a shelter, and they will quickly run to court and start to prosecute the abuser, so that it's no longer in the hands of the woman. So there's been a lot of, because I go to Washington, D.C. to advocate. So we have been pushing for a lot of bills. So a lot of states are doing things like that. The UK is very good. They used to do this where they can prosecute the abuser without the victim, whether she agrees or not. In the US, some states are catching up because the abuser, you remember that it was a love relationship. So that's the woman's love language. So, but they have found that they come and kill these women. So now some states are pushing that, look, we're going to take the woman out and put the woman away. And when the police came to my home, I mean, there were expensive cars outside, 6-bedroom house. The lawn was manicured. They just looked at me, black woman, you should be happy that you are living in this neighborhood. So they didn't do any of these things with me, But progress has been made. So this happened to me a couple of years ago. Progress has been made.
Absolutely. And I know there are questions. I see hands raised up. Give us a minute after Lady T shares how she escaped, and then please put your questions in the chat box, and we'll read them out. Esther, please be aware of the questions that are in the chat box. Lady T is going to tell us how she escaped, and then we'll come to questions and answers. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sister Winifred. I think you really hit the nail on the head. I mean, as a social worker, we work with people like, Miss Winifred, in terms of actually getting our victims, relocated to a safe place. I would definitely not say that, she's given you very, very sound advice. Do not try and attempt it, because the chances of a homicide is very high at that point, because the victim realizes I'm about to lose my prey. And so they will say, well, if I can't have you, nobody's going to have you. So there are loads of organizations, just to quickly say, even within the UK, there is Victim Support, Citizens Advice Bureau, Women's Aid, the Samaritan's Mind, Eve, Refuge, just name it. I mean, obviously, I know that sometimes people think about the inconvenience. Oh, that means I'm going to relocate. I'm going to move my kids. Which one is better? For you to be alive than for you to be in a safe place, than for you to be killed. So it's what you're going to, it's a decision. It's not an easy decision, but it's one that you do need to make, and only you can make it. And in the UK, the police can exercise their powers. All right. I mean, I have a family that I just went out to see today, where the police have actually exercised. I mean, a lot of time to get accommodation is so hard. But in situations like this, police with another organization, charity organization, had quickly, within hours, moved her, found a place, moved her out of the area. So that is what is possible within the UK. You can even apply for civil orders, non-molestation order, a lot of restraining orders. That's why the Domestic Act changed in 2021. So just empower yourself with the information, with knowledge, because I think we said that my problem was that I lacked the knowledge, so I didn't know when I was being abused. And so when I was going to come out, oh God, it wasn't easy, because I brought family in, you see. So I brought my family, I like the question that lady asked. And that was the greatest mistake of my life. Till today, my ex and my family are opposite. I mean, they don't have any problem with them, but he has problem. He does. I mean, they don't have problems with him, but he has problems with them, because they came in, and to salvage the situation and to protect me. So everything they did, he saw it as they were only standing up and fighting up for me. All right. So it was the biggest mistake. And also for those narcissistic abusers, like Dr. Moreno said it so well, there is nothing you can do that would ever make them to be satisfied with control. They want absolute control, absolute. They want to break you down completely, and anything that stands in the way, they will take it out. Because it was so bad that my ex, what did he not say about my mom? Because obviously, to the glory of God, I was raised by a woman who did not tolerate abuse. So I didn't grow up seeing abuse. The only time I saw abuse was when I went on holiday to visit my father, who was a polygamist, and I saw how he treated one of his wives, and I was traumatized that day, to be honest, because I'd never seen anything like that. But with my mom as the primary carer, I never saw that. And so being empowered, by a mother like that during my own time was a gift. But obviously it did have a massive impact on the marriage, on the relationship between my ex and myself and my entire family, because they did not stand for it. So they couldn't come and take me out physically, because God, this is me. I didn't have a job. I was doing business. Where's the money? Like I said, he would go away, not leave money. I had 3 young children with special needs, away from the family completely. My family all lived in London. I was outside of London, no family network, but my family was there on the phone. They were there financially. So that was a very positive protective factor for me, that, they were there supporting me mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and also financially. And so the way it happened for me, like Miss Winifred said, everybody's case is different, because of my religious belief that God hates divorce. That was also used to perpetrate the abuse. And I didn't know how I was going to get out, because my mother had gotten out of hers. There is this stigma attached to, oh, well, we all want to make our marriage work. We don't want to, walk in the steps of our parents. So you stay there. And so I didn't know how to get out. But all I know was that I prayed so hard. And I started also them, they advised me to get the police involved, and I started to get the police involved, and that curbed the abuse for a while. But at the point where the final breakup came, I mean, it was just, I believe it was as a result of my prayers as well, because this monster just rose up within him, and he did what he did that night. And I knew that this was a call to the police. And most of the time when I would call the police, when they come, I would say, oh no, it's okay, I don't want to press charges. I don't want to press charges. So I had that record, with the police of not pressing charges. So at some point they will begin to wonder, okay, are you really, are you authentic? Even though they now know that, I mean, that's the norm. I mean, before a woman presses charges, she would have had several chances. And so on this particular night, when the demon came upon him and he did what he did, and it was going to be of a sexual nature and a physical and a sexual nature, I just placed that call, and that was the end. The police turned up within few minutes, picked him up. He was about to run, picked him up, and that was the end. So that was how I got out. I mean, he was arrested, and obviously I had to get the keys to the house from him. There was a time he couldn't come back to the house whilst the investigation was going on. And then by the time he was released, his pride would not let him come back to the house, because he, at that point in time, I think he realized that he hadn't actually won, and that he probably was exposed. So he couldn't come back. And also the fact that I said, give me the house keys, can the police? So I told the police to get the house keys from him. And that was just, complete surrender for him. And that was my escape. That was my escape. But support network was very key.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Honestly, the support that you got. Now, I wanted to get a Nigerian, because we have a lot of Nigerians on this call. For me, are you there? I know you stayed for some time in Nigeria. Were you able to speak? Are you able to speak from the Nigerian perspective when it comes to leaving? Are you able to speak on that or not?
I can say from my experience, what I found quite quickly was that people didn't name what was happening to them as domestic abuse. And I think that was a real deliberate, cultural, religious type thing. We won't call it, because there's a lot of power in what we call something. When we name something, there's power. And I remember my first client, when she described what was happening, and I said to her, do you realize that is domestic abuse? She ran away, couldn't find her for 6 weeks. She said she had never, ever thought of it as abuse, and she did not want to face it, because when I named it, it made it real, and she couldn't avoid it any longer. She couldn't avoid thinking about how it was affecting her children.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that frustrated me no end, and I just could not believe, was that I would talk to women and they would say, oh, I've been to the church, and the church has said, I need to pray, I need to fast, I need to be submissive. And I remember thinking, until you die? Or what is wrong with these people? Yes.
A pastor said to a woman who has been physically assaulted by her husband, and the pastor said to her, iron sharpens iron. Iron, when you put iron together, sparks come out. So the fact that you're beating each other is you're fulfilling scripture. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. To me, that just blew my mind. I was like, for the average Nigerian victim, she's going to go to church. She's going to go to church. She's going to go to friends. She's going to go to family. And if she's receiving the same message from all these people in one way or another, that she is at fault, she's not going to go anywhere anymore. She's going to just suck it up and say, obviously, there's something wrong with me. And it's always funny to me when people say to me, when I say what I do, and they say, oh, so you advise women to leave their husbands? I said, no, I never advise a woman to leave her husband. We merely sit and talk about what is going on. The decision that she makes is hers, because that is one of the first things that we must understand when we are working with survivors. For too long, they have been disempowered. They've not been allowed to make decisions for themselves. And we can't allow ourselves to think that we are these saviors riding in to save the day and insisting that she should do this, she should do that. How are we different from the abuser? We're still taking agency away from her.
Absolutely.
So we have to be very careful. Winifred makes fantastic points. So I just say to women, I say, look, you know, if this is a situation that you find yourself in, if you had to leave your house in a hurry and you couldn't go back, what are the most important things that you need to take? What are the most important things that you need to have? Typically, that would be a passport. It would be birth certificates for you, your kids. It would be educational certificates. It would be any kind of banking situation. Just if you could never go back to your house, what are the things you absolutely need to start again elsewhere? And then I say to them, no matter how you do it, you need to start putting some money away that only you have access to. Start to put money away that only you have access to. If you have to short the shopping bill, short the shopping bill. You have to start putting money aside, because let's be honest, you're not going to get very far if you don't have financial ability. And, you know, let's not also forget, one of the strengths of our culture is family, community. But one of the weaknesses of our family, of our community, is family. And, you know, so if the perpetrator says, oh, you know, I'm going to tell your family, and maybe they've got you to do something that's not quite right, you're now dealing with the shame of that. And you're like, I don't want my mom to know that I did this. I don't want my dad to know that I did this. And of course, he says to you, if you tell anybody, I'm going to tell them what you did. And you know, nobody's going to have sympathy for you there. So there are so many things militating against a woman. Any woman who actually goes, I'm like, that woman she's a superstar, because it is so difficult to finally go and stay gone. It's so difficult, so difficult. So anyone who does, it doesn't matter that they look like a mess at the beginning. But again, that's also something, because all of the gains that people tell you, and that's something that I had to come to understand as a prosecutor. Success to me was quite straightforward. I got a conviction, or the perpetrator pleaded guilty. That was success to me, but it wasn't success to the women. The success to the women is, how do I get my life back? Success to the women is, how can I get my sanity back and take care of my kids? Success to the woman was, you know, how do I start again and not make the same mistakes? And so our ideas of success were at odds. As a prosecutor and as somebody who was experiencing this. And then finally, because I know time is of the essence, I just wanted to say about, you know, prosecuting without the survivor. You know, there's a different way of expressing it, because when people hear that, they think, oh, we can just take over the case and be done. Our system in the UK is adversarial. There is the need for a person to make a complaint. So what has happened through training and things like that is prosecutors have been encouraged to understand that just because the survivor says she no longer supports the prosecution, it doesn't mean you can just drop the case like that, because there may well be other evidence that you can use to prosecute a case.
That makes sense.
And one that stays in my mind is the first time that I actually did it without the support of the victim. In fact, she came to give evidence for him. They had gone to a hotel and he had kicked off in the hotel, and he had assaulted the hotel manager who had come to her rescue. So I had him with his injury. I had him telling me about her injury. And I had the voice of the perpetrator himself, who was caught at the cash machine stealing her money, saying, I did it. I never liked her anyway.
Oh, wow.
In that situation, I was able to still fashion a case
there,
because I had another witness. But the majority of domestic abuse takes place behind closed doors. So it's around changing people's mindset, because let's remove the domestic aspect of it. If two people go into a room and somebody punches somebody and somebody comes out and says, this person punched me in the face, we wouldn't think twice before we said, oh yeah, let's look at that. Let's investigate that. Let's find out what's going on. But much like weddings that cause people to add like 100% to their prices, when people hear domestic abuse, they're like, what evidence do you have? How many times? Who was there? And I'm like, hello? If it was a stranger who hit me, we wouldn't be having this discussion because you've
Yeah.
heard domestic abuse.
Correct.
You're now asking me, you're holding me to a higher standard of proof. And that's not right. So
Absolutely.
yes,
Thank
progress
you.
has been made. Absolutely, progress has been made. By and large, we
Absolutely.
still do need at least a statement from the
From-
victim
from
to
the
say,
victim.
this is what happened to me.
Thank you so much. But I want to stick with this economic power, because that is one of the reasons why women can't leave. And I was talking to a lady in Nigeria when I was in Lagos, and she's from an abusive relationship, like everything, abusive relationship in physical, emotional, everywhere, beat her to the point where she almost lost her eyes, and then he left, right? This woman picked herself up with the help of people. She's now a trader in the market, right? She's a trader in the market, and she's doing well. She took her kids to school. She empowered herself. Guess who came back? The man came back. Okay. And by the time he was finished dealing with her this time, she had lost the 6 stalls that she had before he left, lost everything.
Wow.
Because she willingly gave that guy everything, but the guy came back, I'm sorry, nothing, and came back and did everything. She willingly gave the man everything. I am going to say something here, please. If you have been in a pattern of abuse, if you have been in an abusive relationship that is over a year, and most people have been in it for decades, if you've been in an abuse that is over a year, I want you to please get help. This thing doesn't go away. Find somebody. Contact us at JARS. We will link you with a trauma specialist. You need your own therapy. You need your own therapy. I mean, if you've come out, I'm talking about if you've come out of domestic violence, things just don't change in your head like that. You have to learn how to live again. You have to learn how to think again. You have to learn how who you are again, because all of that has been taken away from you. It's a born again experience. It is a deliverance. It's a deliverance. You will learn who you are. You would learn how to show up in your life so that abuse doesn't happen again. And in healing yourself, you're going to heal the next generation. And if you have children that were in the abuse with you, please put them in therapy. Send them to counselors. Let them talk and talk and talk. Don't hide things. Let them talk and talk and talk. Explain things to them. If you need to apologize, apologize. If you don't need to apologize, don't take on somebody else's apology. But in this thing, there is healing. The brain, the plasticity of the brain can remake itself. So there is healing along the way. I see, Esther, I see some hands up. Can you please read the question? So before let me bring my panel back. I don't know what happened to Fumi, she dropped off.
No, I'm still here.
No, there you go. Can we have the question, please?
Dr. Marino, let me quickly say something that
Yes,
Fumi
please.
said
Go ahead.
before the questions. I know I saw it in the chat where Fumi said that the police, the system can abuse the victim. That was my reality. So it's important that we re-emphasize this because people are listening. And sometimes these people are in a vulnerable position. That the way you live a relationship is very important. You've got to make sure that you do safety planning because you can be abused by the abuser. And then your own family, that they call it cultural violence, they can abuse you too, because most times people don't believe the victim, whether you are looking at family, whether you are looking at the court. That's why you have a hashtag, start by believing. So don't feel that you've heard this and so now you're going to carry your briefcase and start marching to court or something. Be aware that you need to be empowered. Like Dr. Marino said, your head has to be well because the abuse has affected your mental health. Absolutely. You've got to be stronger. Your brain has to be reconfigured. You have to be an advocate for yourself. And that is why coming to events like this, going to a support group so that you can get strength. That's
Yes.
why that is typically advised by the domestic violence advocate before they take you to court. Because when you get to court, it is not a game because there are so many stakeholders. Your judge, the attorneys want to make money, and then and your prosecutor, the attorney for the for your abuser. So there are so many things involved. So this is something that I would like to reemphasize, that safety planning, getting strong is very important. Getting empowered, getting well, getting therapy is so important before you start to face the court system, because the court system, like Fumi said, is very adversarial. So you can be abused. So I really, because it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars that I should never have wasted, I should never have spent. So I want to emphasize that.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. I see, Esther, you come and help me with this. In question and answer,
Here,
please.
ma'am. There's just one question so far.
Okay, I see.
There's
I see
another
Esther has
question
her
by
hand up.
T, but I'm not sure if it was a question. Maybe when I see she can
Esther,
tell us whether it's a question. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Esther, no, I'm saying there are two hands up. Do you see them?
Yes, I do, but I want to read the first question out first.
Okay.
Yeah. So someone asked, I think this is peculiar to a city. She said, is there a domestic violence survivor support group that anyone can recommend? Though I've seen some answers in the chat, but I don't know
Okay,
if you
then
want
that's
to
been
respond to
what
that.
city is the person? Then that's a chat question. Let's leave that for the chat so people to respond to that.
Okay.
And please
Then
also
Lady
a simple
T-
Google search can also help you, please.
Yeah, that's fine.
Depending on where you are. I don't know how this thing, I don't know if, and actually not, I don't know. I know that also support groups in Nigeria. Depends on the state that you live in. Well, Esther, go ahead.
Yeah, second one, Lady T, but how do I live a normal life? I don't know if that's supposed to be a question or comment.
Well, yeah, no, she was responding to what
yeah.
we're talking about. It was a comment. Yeah.
Okay, all right, then there's no question.
All right, so call on Lady Mrs.
Grace.
Alexander. Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Alexander, are you there? Okay. Prof.
Calling me?
Yes, well, yes, I was calling Mrs. Alexander, but
Yes. Okay. Yes,
she wasn't-
I just want to ask a question. Whether it's one of the reasons why, because when you are a parent of it, Lady T mentioned that he has 3 special needs children. Is that right?
Yes, they had some dietary.
Yes, and could that be one of the things why your husband was reacting as well, was behaving like that to you? Because I know when you have a child with special needs, that can affect the family dynamics.
Definitely, and obviously the needs were not to do with any kind of disability, but you're so right, because some of the families that I work with are in those kind of situations, and it does put a lot of impact, pressure on the family. It impacts on the dynamics, and if the guy is already an abuser, it's just any excuse really to exercise control. But obviously that factor can definitely fuel.
Can be heightened. Is that what
yeah.
you're saying? Can be really heightened as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
If the person is an abuser. Okay, I can relate to that. Yeah, that's fine.
Look, I just to amplify what you've said, an abuser does not need a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They will find a reason.
They
will find if that man was have still been an abuser if those children didn't have any special needs. They will find a reason. There is always something that heightens it. It could be special needs. It could be your faith. It could be your work. It could be your friends. It could be your family. It doesn't matter. An abuser is going to abuse, given the especially in captivity in the home when they have you to themselves. So understand that the abuser has probably been abused by themselves too. So the abuser probably also has a history of being abused. So they come in there, because remember we're talking about the epigenetics. So
Yeah.
people are already programmed to be a person in a way. The perpetrator usually becomes the prey usually becomes a perpetrator if they don't get help.
That's
So
right.
they just need they don't need a reason. They would find one. Just so we to amplify what you said, Professor Grange.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Maringo, and everybody. You know, I am here like a third generation from you, because what we never called this abuse at all. Suffered it silently. And to the extent that we stayed with our husbands for over 40 years, almost 50 years or whatever, and we tried to adapt, you know. Now, it was at a cost to our own health, as you
Absolutely.
have said. You know, we sort of tried very hard not to react somatically, you know, and or emotionally and all that. So all that you have described happened even long ago to most mothers, most women. But what is, and we never talked about it. Unfortunately, we did not talk about it. And our children, this epigenetic thing is very real. Our children got that message silently from us. But what I tried to do was to make sure that they got out of the house as soon as possible, as soon as they got their O levels, A levels, you are going away, because the control was now going onto them, was not being put onto them. They were not to go out to do this and that, So anyway, that is one part of it which you have, highlighted. I just want to say that, sometimes we were lucky to have somebody who also had suffered that kind of abuse, but who had empathy and would come and advise. Not a counselor, was not trained, but would come and advise. One of them was my mother-in-law, who before we actually got married, she could anticipate problems with financial abuse, because we were both doctors working hard and we would be earning. And she said to me, never put your money with your husband's own. I mean, at that time, I said, what? I mean, that's your son. Oh, I tell you, Nike, don't do it. So that actually saved me that problem of thinking of financial abuse or sufferings of financial abuse. So, I think nowadays you have highlighted all that will help women, and all that needs to be done now is to let them know about it, which is what you are doing now. It is very, very important that they should know about it. I have watched some of my children also go through this process. And of course, because they are now in modern times, it's not so easy for them to even adapt. It is not easy. So, Winifred knows many of them, and I don't have many, three. You know two of them at least. So I want to thank you very much for coming out with very painful experiences, personal experiences, which need to be, the stories need to be told. But at that time we could not tell. We could not tell you. It was an abomination to even go out and say that your husband was abusing you.
Wow.
So
Thank you
and
so much.
the other thing is this, that most times they are not abusing continuously. There are times when they abuse, and then there are times when they are very, very pally, and usually when you are outside and everybody says, oh, you are so lucky, you have this wonderful man and all that, and we are all dancing, and so that is something that people, the younger generations need to be on the lookout for.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you for just adding to this body of knowledge. And look, I know that a lot of us have experienced the epigenetics of trauma from our parents because they never got to address it.
Yeah.
So then it came to us, and if we don't stop it, we're going to carry it on to our children. So I think this is one of the reasons why this kind of forums are so important. If a woman, I really am concerned about two things. The Nigerian, and I know that we're all from across the globe here, but we have a lot of Nigerians I can see in the names. The Nigerian woman who is, or man, look, men can be abused. Look, women do type 2 abusing, where you're cussing them out and you're constantly, nagging at them and telling them. I mean, women also have their own systems of abuse where, you cut them out from their friends. They cannot go see their friends. You tell them that that they're not good enough. You're constantly doing that. So that is also abuse, and we must not what is the word I'm looking? We must not
condone.
relegate that, right? And so that's that. But I'm concerned about two groups of women. I'm concerned about the first woman, the single lady who is out there and who has no concept of abuse patterns or the psychology of abuse, and they get into these relationships so quickly and they get used to abuse. And I've seen single women who have had 3, 4, 5, 6 boyfriends who have been abusive to them, and they still don't know that is abuse, because maybe the boy never chokes them or something. But hopefully today we've been able to highlight some of those characteristics for you. Watch this thing over, see what it looks like before you get into a relationship. If you're in a relationship and your partner says, give me your phone, let me see what is in your photos, let me see who you're talking to, that is a sign. Run away.
Yeah.
All right. The first thing, let me have your phone. What's your password? Why do you have a password? If that's someone who's controlling, and they probably are going to escalate from there. The second woman is the one who is at home right now listening to us, always going to watch this. And this woman doesn't have what Winifred and Lady T have talked about in terms of the system's response. In the United States, we have laws now, and our laws are continuously being modified because of advocates, right? In the UK, the same thing. In Nigeria, we do have some state. Lagos State is good. They have some of these departments that work with abuse victims, but where the system itself, the system itself, not just the family, the system itself victimizes the person. How do we help those women there? How do you get the help that you need in the place that you are, in Lagos, in Onitsha, in the village in Ekiti? How do you get help? How do you get out when you don't have any economic power? You just depend on this man to bring the food on the table. The first thing I say to you is that, number one, believe that there is always somebody that would help. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. We believe there's somebody. And number two, if you are somebody who has a woman you have not seen in a long time, Winifred talked about Kemi, who just kept thinking, where is Winifred? If you have a woman and you're suspicious, you become the deliverer for that woman. You're the one that God is going to use for that woman. So all of us, it's going to take a village, because I don't know the answers to the questions of the person who lives in those villages, who lives in a place where the system itself is adversarial, not just the court system, but the culture itself, it's adversarial. I don't know how to help that kind of woman. So if anybody else has the answer to this, well, please speak up. How does that woman in Nigeria who is facing all of these things, how does she get help? She doesn't have the money. She doesn't have the all with all. What does she do? Fumi, I see your hand. Go ahead.
I think you've already alluded to it. Even as a former prosecutor, I would be the first to say the law is a blunt instrument. It is confined, it is restrained in what it can do. The power has always been in individuals' hands. What can we do as a community? I'm reminded of female genital mutilation. And the law, we've had a law in the UK since the 80s, but as far as I'm aware, they've never prosecuted anybody successfully.
Oh, they have.
The real work is done when groups of women come together and say, okay, we're going to do this subversively now. When we have our little age group meetings, what are we talking about in those age group meetings? When we do our, what's it called? Esusu, the collection money
The
that
money.
we do. How do we encourage women who maybe might not be thinking about putting money aside? How do we say to them, come and join us in this thing? The power really is in the hands of people in the community. And when people organize systems, it's a bit like a textbook. Just because somebody has put something in a textbook doesn't mean that's the first time it's ever been done. It just means that somebody has sat down to record it. There's loads of stuff that's been going on that nobody has ever put in a textbook before. Things will catch up with our activities. People will begin to record and do whatever they're doing after that. But let's start the activities first. And if you are that one woman, think about the things that you would need, the things that would have helped you, and begin to do them for another woman. Begin to, make it known that, when we're toddling off to do whatever we're doing, talk to women at gatherings, just take the temperature and see. It's not going to be easy. And it's probably going to be met with a fair amount of resistance, because sometimes as women, we are the fiercest guardians of unhelpful behavior.
Yes.
So obviously there will be resistance, and we all know the people that we should keep quiet around, that we shouldn't be talking about matters in front of them. But it is the community. That is where we will first see the change. Other people can come later. Laws can come later. It is in the community and helping one another. That is where we will first see change. And it may not look big at first, but don't be disheartened. It's not going to be big first. Let it at least start, and then we can build on that.
Excellent. Very good. Excellent.
I would like to add to this, please.
Please add.
That's Winifred. Okay, so thank you so much, Fumi. I definitely agree with that, because the first person the woman will go to before she even goes to the court system is possibly somebody in her neighborhood, a church, a pastor. So really, change happens at the grassroots level. It starts with awareness. I always say that awareness and action brings transformation. So the more we talk about this, especially now that it's October, so if you go to my Facebook, you see my Facebook, my LinkedIn is blasted. I'm blasting the whole month of October about domestic violence. And I have the courage to go into these spaces to really share these stories, but not just as a survivor, but as somebody who is educated, because I have quite a few certificates about domestic violence. So the more we have this type of sessions, and we have so that women who are not in domestic violence can take responsibility. That's why that's one thing I want people to live with. That what is your own piece in this peace puzzle? The fact that you have come to hear this, are you going to hear this and just go and sit down? Or are you going to say that you will be a woman's advocate? You will, I put some helplines, some information about domestic violence organizations and locally within Nigeria. When you see a woman who is going through this sort of hardship, and you know the person is traumatized from what Dr. Merino has put together from the presentations, the red flags, when you see a person is traumatized, are you going to just walk past that woman? Or are you going to do what we call bystander intervention to say, oh, these are some things that I know, some resources that can help you. Let me help you, let me assist you. So each one of us, we are the ones that are going to make the change, similar to what Fumi and Johnson and Coach Fumi have said. Sometimes it may not just be a support group. Sometimes it can just be one person being the helpline, just like Kemi listened and Kemi reached out to me. Of course, we didn't do it the right way, but thank God I'm here, But each one of us, that's why we have this advocacy, these events. Each one of you, you have a responsibility, if you're not in this situation, to say to yourself, I am going to be the change agent. I am going to be the change maker. If I do see somebody who is going through this, I will not just walk past. I am going to equip her. I'm going to educate her. I'm going to bring her to this sort of event so that she can hear and be educated, and the light bulbs can come up, because a lot of women will defend their relationships from now till forever. But it takes time to educate her. Each one of you can do something. One of the things that we are doing one of the things we are doing in Nigeria, although I'm here in the States, actually I'm in Canada visiting my mom, but one of the things that we're doing is that we have what we call the Girl Force movement. And with the Girl Force movement, we've come together. Dr. Merino is there. I know Fumi dropped off, but Professor Nike is there. And our goal is to provide coordinated advocacy for the girl child across the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And the reason why we go to the girl child, because really it starts from that age. We want to train the girl child on how to take care of themselves. Prevention is better than cure, how to avoid this type of relationship, so that from the time that they are young, they know what, when they see a dog and they say this thing is what looks like a dog, I better stay away. So from the time they are young, they know this sort of person, I better just leave you. So we're doing with the Girl Force movement, we are sharing with each other all these informations that we ensure that the leaders of organizations that have girl children, that these leaders, is that English right? I'm not sure, but anyway, let me continue. The leaders of organizations have enough information so that when they are talking to the girl child, they know to equip and empower the girl child to say, my dear, this is what you should be avoiding from an early age. If a girl starts to hear that all throughout adolescence, through university, by the time they are ready to date, it's already ingrained in their psychology, and they know, because it takes a long time to change the cultural programming. So by the time you are talking to these girls over and over about domestic violence, about red flags of abusers, prevention is better than cure. Our goal is that we will have a peaceful community where these girls will not get into relationship. So that's what we are doing with Girl Force movement. But then there are people who are women advocacy groups that are empowering women so women can live. But so outside of all that group, each one of us can do something. I call it, what is your piece of the peace puzzle? When you leave today, put all this information, put it in your back pocket. When I'm in the States, you see this band I wear this band everywhere. I've worn it since I left my ex-husband in 2012. That's because there was a girl that left her boyfriend too. At the same time I left. And the day before my birthday, this ex-boyfriend came and killed her. Her name is Jamie Kimball. So I'm one of the ambassadors of Jamie Kimball Foundation. And this band, it opens the door for conversation. People are always asking me, what is this? And I begin to tell them story. And I carry little cards with me to tell them of all the resources that are in the community and little books that I've compiled of all the red flags of abusive people. So I keep it out. So there's something that you can do. And that is the answer to Dr. Merino's question. That each one of us, don't just hear this information and go to bed, go and sleep on this information. Take this information. If you have the resources, put them into cards and and share them with people and help a woman. Because there's a lot of people that won't rent to a woman who is single and who is going through this sort of experience. They will say, no, you will bring on your boyfriend. So we hope you will change your mindset after listening to this conversation. I'm done speaking.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can I,
thank
Dr. Marino, can I just quickly
Yeah,
add?
go ahead. Last words. Go ahead.
Yeah,
You have
right.
to wrap up.
Obviously, we've broken the silence speaking about it. I think in our homes, we need to break the silence. We need to speak to it with our children, because every time we keep quiet about it, we are reinforcing that is, because silence is consent. We're reinforcing that is good, that is acceptable behavior, especially for those of us who have boys. Like, I'm raising 3 boys, and so it is a ministry for me to help them to understand what domestic abuse is, and even not to tolerate it from any, of their own when they start getting into relationship. And so I think that's really important. And I just want to throw it out there as well, that in terms of my work with families, we there was a lot of hush hush, parents telling their kids, oh, don't tell anybody at school, hide that thing, don't say anything. And then obviously something terrible finally happens, and then social services has to go in there. But social services does not have to be involved, but there are so many other support mechanisms within the community that can support you. But if you say to your child, an innocent child who should be able to just freely express their wishes and feelings, if you say, don't say anything, you're beginning to teach them the art of secrecy, so let's keep this, and this thing just keeps perpetuated. And even when social services do have to get involved, honestly, a lot of the families that I work with as a social worker, it's the opportunity for them to actually get the help, the support that they need to move forward. I know people have had all kinds of horrible experiences with social services, but it is a lifeline. It is actually there to protect, and it can, once they're involved, that's it. Everything has to be out of the cat, and that might be your opportunity as well to get the help, to get the perpetrator out of the house, with all the other support agencies around you. So that's what I just wanted to say. And one thing that came to my mind, Dr. Marino, is the fact that till today, my ex still denies all the abuses, completely denies, and flipped it around and went around telling everybody that I was the abuser. Now, there are men who are like that. You just know that there is something psychologically wrong. It's not just an issue of pride or male ego. There is something psychologically wrong. And what do you do with that? You got to reinforce yourself. You got to know your sense of efficacy has to be restored, your identity, so that it doesn't really matter what he's saying. I know the truth, and so it no longer moves me. So waiting for them to admit it or to apologize is probably never going to happen. So you've got to just learn to respect yourself and rebuild yourself and move on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Oh, powerful, powerful, powerful conversation. You guys have added to the body of knowledge. You have encouraged us. You have given us a mandate, Winifred, talking about what you should do with this information. Heal yourself first. Heal thyself. Okay, so if you're listening to us today and you are in a pattern of abuse, please, 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 please get some help. And then never forget that next generation, you stand up for them, you believe them. All right, that is very important. And on that note, we've spent over 2 hours on this. I didn't think you were going to stay so long. Wait, 2 participants raised their hands. I don't see any hands raised.
It was me and Lady T, so I've lowered.
Oh, you guys put it back down. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank Fumi Johnson for being. Yours was impromptu. We didn't even. I just saw you and I was like, we're bringing her on there. I thank you for Winifred Areye. You are always an inspiration. You are a testimony for women who have gone through so much. And when I see what you do, look, with more grace to you, keep on keeping on, and may you be replenished 1,000 times. Lady T, you know, I just got to know you, and I heard your story for the first time really in that way today. I'm so proud of the things that you're doing, and I wish you that maybe next time we'll come back and really talk about what healing looks like. For the abuser. What does healing look like for the abuser? I think that will be a part 2 thing. So you're all, and thank you for Professor Grange for adding to the conversation, especially from your own generation. I think that was powerful. For all of those who asked questions and for all of those who added to this, thank you. Thank you for my team. Esther is my 8th girl. She's here. Esther, show yourself. Raise your hand. All right. I don't think Abby's still with us, but thank you so much. And I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor
Thank you.
Grange. I
Thank
really
you
love that.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
On the
you.
inside. Thank
Thank
you.
you, D dots.
I
Thank
tried to
you.
get my
Thank you so
granddaughter
much.
to join.
Thank you.
Thank
said
you.
D-dot?
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye. Just I'm going to end. Esther, don't let us lose the
Sorry, before you, sorry, I don't want to talk over you. My apologies. But Professor Grange, I am so appreciative that you shared what you shared, because people from your generation do not relate to it.
talk
So
about
having this intergenerational conversation, that was the cream, that was the cream on my coffee. You know, it was just,